You stumble across the arid rock of the Holy Land, your armor feeling more like a portable coffin now than protection. Your pack horse, already half dead, seizes and spasms on the ground. Your sword has been bloodied, like the muck and filth on your once white tunic. The red cross across your chest, once a source of great chivalric pride, now feels like a grim foreshadowing for a dark fate. What's one more death now, if it keeps you alive? With a well-practiced cleave, you slash open your horse's belly and regard the blood that spills forth with unguarded thirst. The Holy Father told you that doing all this would lead to your forgiveness, but is this what forgiveness really feels like? Is salvation desperately slurping up horse blood off the scorched earth? The answer to that is between you and God alone now, but God remains silent. This is what it's really like to be a Crusader, and you're about to find out that these wars are anything but holy. The first strange twist in all this is that you grow up in immense comfort, especially for a boy born in the year 1070. It is a time when most are peasants who are born in the dirt and die there too after a lifetime of grueling labor. You are the second-born son of a noble house in France, growing up in a castle in the countryside, your every whim attended to, wanting for nothing. You are one of a tiny fraction of your country that is taught to read and write. From a young age, you're trained in sword fighting with the expectation that you will one day be dubbed a knight. You learn to ride and hunt, and you study the great battles of history past. Compared to the peasantry, you are destined for a life of comfort or glory, whatever you so choose. Only one thing is denied to you, but that one thing drives you mad with desire. Being the second-born of your house, unless some terrible tragedy befalls your brother, he will be the one to inherit your father's titles and castle, not you. Of course, you always have wealth and connections, and a place at the castle as your brother's honored guest, but you are cursed to remain in his shadow. Your destiny is to become a knight, your brother's a lord. Your focus on training means that you become twice the fighter your brother ever is. During swordsmanship training as a squire, you conduct yourself with a focus and a fury that he can never quite muster. Perhaps when you strike at the training dummy or your sparring partner, it is your brother who you imagine in its place. Still, that's all just a fantasy. You aren't the sort to murder your brother for a shot at your father's lands and titles. Having a lordship of your own needs to remain a distant dream. Little do you know, thousands of miles away, over decades of tension, something unimaginably huge is bubbling its way to the surface. It starts in 1077, when you are just a little boy. The burgeoning empire of the Seljuk Turks conquers the Holy Land and takes it for themselves, making them an international point of focus. The Holy Land is, of course, a sacred place to everyone who belongs to the three Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. For the Jewish people, the Holy Lands are where God stayed Abraham's hand in the sacrifice of Isaac. For Christians, it is where Jesus Christ ascended to heaven. And for Muslims, it is where the Prophet Muhammad did the same. It is a pilgrimage site for people of all these faiths, so naturally, the area has a Muslim, Jewish, and Christian population, which the Seljuk Turks view as a liability to their new dominion. Soon, word begins to spread that Christian pilgrims are being heavily taxed when visiting the site. It is also said that mistreatment from the Turk rulers forces many Christians who live in the Holy Land to leave westward. They spread stories of Seljuk cruelty to the Byzantine Empire. Alexius, emperor of the Byzantines, grows distrustful of the Seljuks, fearing that they will expand westwards and result in bloody conflicts along Byzantine lines. The tension spikes even higher when the Seljuks conquer the holy city of Antioch, Syria, in 1085. For Western Europe, the fear is that if the Seljuks are then able to claim Constantinople, the seat of the Byzantine Empire, all of Christendom might fall soon after. Alexius needs a powerful ally, and he finds it in the clergy when in 1095 Pope Urban II changes everything with a simple proclamation. The letter reaches you one foggy morning after you just returned from a hunting trip in the nearby moors. It is a holy proclamation from the Pope, decided at the Council of Clermont, telling of a great crusade to the east where the land of Christ can be reclaimed. For anyone willing to take part, there's glory, riches, and most enticingly of all, the promise for anyone who takes part that their sins will be forgiven and they will receive an easy pass into the kingdom of heaven. Being a God-fearing man of 25, terrified of the implications of the murderous urges you'd borne towards your own brother, this seems like a deal almost too good to be true. Your brother can keep his lordship. Perhaps in the Holy Land, you can fight and earn your own. But you can never even dream of the unimaginable horrors you need to suffer through and cause in order to see your childhood dream realized. Jerusalem is still a long way away, and you need to make a grueling journey across Europe before you can even think of fighting. As a show of your faith to the Pope and this cause, you take up a white tunic with a red cross sewn across the chest. Your armor and your sword and shield weigh heavily on your back, but that is virtually all you have with you, since you sell off much of your property to fund your journey, effectively burning the bridge behind you so that the journey east is all that you have left. You ride across the wide plains of France and through Germany with thousands of other Frankish knights and serfs. It isn't just others of the noble born who decide to take up arms in the fight. While you have the prospect of riches and forgiveness, for the serfs joining you, there is the hope of release from their indentured servitude. You join up with still more who share your intent and begin the long, arduous journey towards Constantinople, where this legion of zealots is organized into a true force to be reckoned with by the Byzantines. Of course, as a pious man, you don't give much thought to deeper motivations of the Church, but the reality is that this is more than just a war for the glory of God and to keep the Holy Land in the hands of Christians. While many thousands of faithful penitents may die, the Church stands to grow even richer from their sacrifice. If the crusade is successful, that is. And as you will soon find out, that's one big if. Many of these aspiring crusaders were already conducting less than holy activities in Europe as they moved towards Jerusalem. A popular preacher, Peter the Hermit, traveled across Germany and inspired petty nobles and common folk alike to join the church's cause. One of these inspired individuals was a noble named Count Emico, who expanded his holy mandate to forcibly converting or otherwise slaughtering Jewish Europeans across the Rhine. These horrific pogroms led to entire families being hacked apart by Emico and his army of crusaders, torturing and looting and leaving towns in ruin. These slaughters, later known as the Rhineland Massacres, left around 2,000 Jews dead, and historians would describe it as being a turning point for anti-Semitism in Europe. The massacres of this so-called People's Crusade played a small part in laying the philosophical groundwork for the Holocaust almost 1,000 years later. And despite all this bloodshed wrought by Count Emico and the Crusaders like him, they disbanded and gave up before they even reached Jerusalem. Not like you, though. You keep forging forward with the thousands of others spurred into action by the Pope's Holy Writ. You leave in the first major army under Prince Godfrey of Bouillon, traveling towards Constantinople via Hungary. In Byzantine territory, all local merchants and farmers provide you with supplies and aid you in your pilgrimage. You and your fellow crusaders still pillage and occasionally kill when your supplies run low, sacking villages and slaughtering traveling merchants to strip them of their wares. But you have no need to feel guilty, after all. The Pope had already told you and all the others that your sins would be forgiven through blood expiation in the crusade. Anything you do in the process of reaching that point will soon be wiped clean from the slate. It takes months of grueling travel for you to reach Constantinople, and by the time you and the rest of Prince Godfrey's forces arrive on December 23, 1096, it's already been a year since the Pope declared the war. Several other armies arrive in the following months, forming a full crusading force of over 4,000 mounted knights and around 25,000 infantry. You might think this provides some comfort to Emperor Alexius and his fears of the advancing Turks, but now he has a new problem. After all, how can he guarantee that his imperial interests and the interests of all these crusaders are aligned? What if, after claiming Syria and Jerusalem back from the Turks, the crusaders simply decide to keep the land rather than returning it to the Byzantine Empire? So, in order to allay his fears, he forces all the crusaders to swear an oath of loyalty to him and the empire, and out of fear of reprisal, you and many others do so. Not that an oath under duress is ever worth that much. With the agreements made, you join the crusading forces, teaming up with an auxiliary of Greek troops from the Byzantine Empire, and begin your advance into Turkish territory. By May of 1097, you reach Nicaea, the glorious capital of the Turkish Sultanate and a perfect proving ground for you and your fellow crusaders. Clearly, the Seljuk forces here haven't heard of the resistance brewing in the west. You and your fellow knights roar through the town, carving through Turkish sentinels with the razor-sharp edges of your swords. What little resistance they can put up is quickly crushed by your invading force. By June 19th, Nicaea surrenders and is reclaimed for the Byzantine Empire. It is a humiliating defeat for the Turks and a promising early start for your forces. Your first taste of the glory of battle, but not the last. The greatest challenges are still yet to come. Just a week after claiming Nicaea, you and the other Crusaders pick up your weapons and climb onto your horses once again for the next leg of the campaign. You make the treacherous journey to the holy city of Antioch in Syria to reclaim it for Christ, no matter the cost. But to get there, you and the others need to climb through the rugged, mountainous terrain of Anatolia under the unforgiving glare of the Mediterranean sun. Here, your greatest enemies aren't enemy soldiers, but exhaustion, heat, and thirst. You could literally cook an egg on your armor, and the inside of your mouth feels every bit as dusty and cracked as the ground beneath your horse's exhausted hooves. It's like what you can only imagine hell actually feels like, especially when compared to those wonderfully overcast days of your youth in France. In the delirium of the heat, you can't help but wonder whether you made some terrible mistake coming out here. Would it be that bad if God decided to smite you and send you down to hell if it doesn't feel all that much different to this? To keep supplies from running out, your superiors decide to split your forces into two groups. Your group, led by Bohemond I of Antioch, acts as the vanguard. You want to be where the fighting is thickest, to prove your mettle and earn the glory you come here seeking. All you need is an enemy, and soon you have one. On July 1st, 1097, as you and the rest of the advance column are passing through Dorylaeum, you decide to make camp to rest and replenish. If you keep going, you and your horses will surely drop dead. It's the only reason that you are well rested and alert as the unforgiving sun peers over the horizon and the attack begins. Something whistles through the baking morning air. You hear one of the other knights about 20 feet in front of you give out a wet cry and fall from the back of his horse. An arrow is sticking out of his throat, blood bubbling out of his trachea as he chokes and dies. Before anyone can even tell what is going on, more arrows rain down from overhead. You try to find what direction they're coming from, but their path is lost in the heat of the sun. Knights and infantrymen scramble for shields or for rocks and trees to hide behind as the deadly volleys hammer against them. A well-trained force of 7,000 Turkish horse archers, led by the Sultan Kilij Arslan I, who is not even yet 20 years old, ambushes you and the Crusader vanguard. You are pinned down to the side of the mountain as they unleash more arrows down onto their European enemies. They have the element of surprise on their side, as well as the range advantage and the familiarity with the heat and brutal terrain. Separated from the larger crusading force, it seems that whatever beginner's luck you were able to muster at Nicaea has already run out. With frightening speed, the Turk horse archers swoop in, letting loose arrows where the Crusader battle lines were weakest before falling back to the safety of the hills. Your vanguard is surrounded on all sides by these skilled marauders. All you and your fellow knights can do is form a defensive line around your unguarded infantrymen. What had once been your camp now becomes your prison. But as you likely put it at the time, it seems that God is on your side here. Arslan was on the battlefield at Nicaea and underestimated your skills, being pushed out of the city and having his wife and children captured by the Byzantines. Arslan pushes his men hard, hoping to save face after the earlier losses, but his men and his horses are equally subjected to the same brutal heat as your own forces. And as mobile and dangerous as the Turkish horse archers are, they still can't break through the Crusader defensive lines. The tide of the battle turns when your reinforcements arrive and the two sides of the Crusader army unite. They push forward, forcing the Turkish horse archers into retreat and putting Arslan on the back foot. When the Turks flee, the Crusaders push forward and claim their camp in the hills, looting Arslan's treasury and becoming very rich in the process. It is yet another defeat for the Turks, but the Crusaders lose thousands in the process, their bodies left lying out on the baking mountainside, perforated with arrows. From the Battle of Dorylaeum, you and your enemies gain a grudging respect for one another. The Gesta Francorum, a written account of the First Crusade, says, had the Turks been Christian, they would be the finest of all races. Arslan also realizes from this battle that it is useless to take on your forces in pitched combat. He can only pick away at the advancing forces with guerrilla tactics. But even with the glow of victory and the riches looted from Arslan's camp, you and your fellow Crusaders continue to struggle in the brutal conditions of the Anatolian mountain ranges. It's in the Taurus Mountains that many more men fall dead from exhaustion, injury, and exposure. This is where, in an act of sheer madness and desperation, you slash the belly of your packhorse and drink its blood. It is truly the closest you ever come to renouncing God Almighty for leading you into this terrible place. Do you even survive to see the city of Antioch? To even think this way feels like investing all your hopes and dreams into a mirage. All that matters is the next mile, the next step. You have to move through this rugged hellscape on faith alone that your destination will be reached eventually. And whether it is by God's grace or sheer unsurmountable willpower, you eventually reach Antioch, the jewel of the Levant. But the second you see it, the awful realization of the horrors ahead begins to sink in. It is the most fortified city you've ever seen, surrounded by huge stone walls and over 400 manned towers, no doubt with months of supplies inside. It quickly dawns on you that this would not be a battle for the fate of this city. It would be a long and brutal siege. The siege of Antioch begins on October 20th, 1097, as the scorching heat that followed you for many months begins giving way to a bitter, bone-shaking cold. You are truly in the Holy Land now, and feel as though God is giving you the same tests of love and faith as Job. Your forces form blockades around the heavily fortified city, as Ya'asiyan, commander of the Antioch garrison, summons relief armies from Damascus and Aleppo, just as your leaders request imperial reinforcements from Emperor Alexius. Sieges are a waiting game, and a cruel gamble to see whose supplies and will break first, the besieged or the invader. You are absolutely sure that it must be hell inside that city, because it feels very much the same outside it. Trapped by your own need to wait out the Turks, you and your fellow Crusaders butcher horses for their blood and meat. You boil up the leather of your boots for food, and pick burrowing beetles and worms out of the ground to devour raw with shaking hands. The relief armies from Damascus and Aleppo arrive one by one, and each engages in a bloody brawl with your forces. You hack, cleave, and stab the freezing blade of your sword and dagger through their bodies. You left France a mere boy, but now you are becoming a violent and terrifying soldier of God. Is this what Jesus envisions when he gives the Sermon at the Mount? You in your tarnished armor, putting your boot in a dead Turk's chest so you can retrieve your sword from his skull with a meaty yank. You simply have to believe it is so. If not, what is all this suffering for? After 8 months of brutality, one of your commanding officers, Lord Robert Guiscard, begins writing to an Armenian Christian soldier named Firuz who is inside the embattled city. Of course, Firuz feels no ideological loyalty to his Muslim leaders in Antioch, and just like everyone else in the city, he is starving and desperate. Lord Guiscard makes the man an offer he can't refuse. If he opens the gates to the city for the Crusaders, he and the other Christians inside can join their forces and take on the Turks together. To Firuz, the answer is obvious. He gives in to Guiscard's demands and opens the gates. When the Crusaders pour in, it is a city of ghosts. Hollow, emaciated faces, exhausted from months of starving and suffering, eaten at by flies and parasites. It feels almost like a mercy to put these pitiful men to the sword, and the Crusaders spare no one. From combatants to civilians, all are butchered like lame cattle. You cut down mercenary and merchant alike, man and woman, elderly and young. After 8 months of madness, your frustration, your bloodlust, accepts no less. There is only one problem. In the heart of the city, the citadel, Shams, the son of Sion, is still holding fast. A siege within the city begins as you and your fellow Crusaders occupy the interior of the Holy City's walls. You let the taste of victory wash away that thought that you are here to be Job, that God is going to mock you and toy with you to test your fate. Until 2 days later, when the Turkish reinforcements arrive. It is easily the largest army you have ever seen in this Holy Land campaign. Tens of thousands of horsemen under the command of Kurbaga from Mosul. They surround Antioch on all sides, trapping you and the other Crusaders within the walls. The invaders become the besieged, and you feel a wave of pure despair wash over you at the thought that you now share the fate of all the pitiful souls that you just slaughtered. It is such a dire turn of events that some of the Crusaders who aren't trapped or killed in the opening ambush from the Mosul reinforcements simply desert and begin heading west. In doing so, they make this an even more hopeless situation for you and all the others. Stephen of Blois, a fellow French knight and a deserter, actually encounters Emperor Alexius and his Byzantine relief forces on the way back from Antioch. He tells the emperor that the battle is now hopeless and they should just turn back, which is exactly what he does. With an army so vastly outnumbering your own outside, and the Byzantine reinforcements now no longer coming to help you, It would take a miracle to deliver you from this hellish situation, but almost nobody would believe that a miracle of sorts truly was about to unfold within the walls of Antioch. On June 10, 1098, a monk among your ranks, Peter Bartholomew, is given a holy vision. In it, he sees the location of the Holy Lance, the Spear of Longinus, within the city's walls, hidden at the Church of St. Peter. It would be easy enough to believe that the pressure of the siege simply drives Brother Bartholomew insane. But when you and your fellow Crusaders search the church, you actually find it, the lance that pierced the side of Christ while he was up on the cross, one of the most important holy relics in all of Catholicism. Legend held that any army that marched under the lance would be undefeatable, and this discovery works you all up into a religious frenzy, convinced that now is the time to strike back. Despite being vastly outnumbered, you prepare a strike force with the lance as a banner and surge out of the gates of Antioch towards the assembled Turkish forces. It could easily be a dead man's charge, a direct leap into martyrdom, but what better time to hope for a miracle than when you're carrying one of the most holy objects in existence? When the Turkish horsemen see the advancing Crusaders, they break ranks in a blind panic, and their superior numerical forces amount to nothing. Many desert, fearing death against the heavily armored Crusaders when their armor is only light. You and your fellow holy warriors successfully rout the Mosul army, and June 28th, the siege of Antioch is officially over. The cowardice of Emperor Alexius costs him dearly, as the Crusaders see his retreat as an excuse to void their oath with him. Antioch is not returned to the Byzantines. Instead, one of the lead Crusaders, Prince Beaumont, claims the city for himself, using it to form the Principality of Antioch. But Antioch is not the main prize for you. Jerusalem beckons, with the prospect of honor, riches, and a slice of the Holy Land to call your own. There's still so much suffering to endure, and so much blood still to spill. A disease epidemic spreads across Antioch in the aftermath of the siege, likely a result of the disgusting siege-time conditions. It kills many, including the legate Adhemar of Lepuy, one of the wisest spiritual leaders of the Crusade. What's more, many of the other leaders fall into violent disputes over who exactly holds power in Antioch. But you can't let this distract you and the other faithful from pursuing your holy mission. The journey to Jerusalem is even more of a nightmare than your previous treks. Arslan has the last laugh here, blocking or poisoning wells on the road to Jerusalem to weaken and picket your forces through attrition. And this is still nothing compared to the horrors that unfold in the taking of the Holy City. It's the siege of Jerusalem, the ultimate push of the First Crusade. This time, you aren't fighting with the Turks, but the Fatimids of Egypt who run a caliphate in Jerusalem. You are now in a force of just over 1,000 knights and around 12,000 infantrymen. It is a pale shadow of the force that left Constantinople well over a year ago, not to mention grievously undersupplied. You cannot endure a long siege in this condition, so the battle is either won in a handful of weeks or not at all. The Egyptians are at first confident of their ability to endure, but after scoffing at the Crusaders from the high walls of the city at first, their tune changes when you and the other Crusaders mount siege towers to scale the walls of the city and pour in from above. The Muslim governor barricades himself in the Tower of David. He later surrenders the tower in exchange for safe passage out of the city. The deal is struck, but his people are doomed. What follows leaves a stain on history: the Massacre of Jerusalem. In the sheer ecstasy of victory, you and your fellow Crusaders begin an indiscriminate slaughter within the city walls. You ride through the city streets proclaiming the name of the Lord while cutting down the fleeing civilians. It goes on like this for days as you and your fellow Crusaders murder countless thousands, butchering and stabbing the innocent as they beg for a mercy that they never receive. It was a horror of truly apocalyptic proportions. You are a blood-drunk monster, stripped of all humanity, but in your mind, it's all still for a good cause. Born out of this baptism of blood is the new Kingdom of Jerusalem. Prince Godfrey of Bouillon, the very man you'd followed from France, becomes the first ruler of this new Crusader state. If the Pope's words are true, you've already been granted your forgiveness. And for your loyalty to Prince Godfrey, you even get land and titles in the new kingdom too. Your journey to the east helps you achieve all your boyhood dreams, and all it costs you is thousands of lives. You now have your own castle in the Holy Land. But for how long? You are now doomed to be trapped between the Byzantines and the Turks, forever paranoid of your standing in this hot and hostile place as you wait for an enemy army to come and exact its revenge. These are the tainted riches of the First Crusade, one of 8 that cut a bloody swath across the centuries. If this is what happens to the warriors of God in the end, how you'd hate to be a warrior of the devil.